We hear a lot about psychedelic-assisted therapy, but 3 out of 4 people who choose to consume psychedelics do so at home or in nature with friends or loved ones. I'm April, founder of Set, an integration platform to help you get the most out of your psychedelic experiences. The podcast episode you're about to listen to may reference one of my previous shows, The High Guide or How to Do the Pot, because I've been a trusted source in cannabis and psychedelics since 2015. I invite you to visit getsetset.com and sign up for our newsletter to receive your free guide on set and setting to make the most of your next psychedelic journey. This podcast discusses cannabis and is intended for audiences 21 and over.
Well, I think as a police officer, you saw that we were arresting people over and over again for the same thing, and drug use was not going down. In fact, drug use was going up. So there was no correlation between our arrest and reduced crime. It was having the opposite effect. And then once I retired and went into the communities and worked as a lawyer one-on-one with folks who were living through the consequences, the collateral consequences of these failed policies, and particularly criminalization of their lives, being forced to pay over and over again for a seemingly innocuous offense like possession of marijuana. And, 10 years later, they still can't, get a decent apartment.
Welcome back. I'm April Pride, and I do the pot. The clip you just heard was from Lee Maddox. She's a retired state trooper who sees the war on drugs as a devastating failure. And she's just one of the amazing women on our social justice episode, which you may recall first aired last November. And considering current events and the fact that we know that less than 5% of cannabis businesses are majority owned by Black people, I highly recommend that you take the time, 30 minutes, and listen to this episode to find out how the choices that you, as a consumer, make at point of purchase will help shape the cannabis industry into one that we can all be proud to work in and support, period. Now is not the time for poser activism in cannabis. And yet, in the wake of the recent uprising, a call for cannabis companies to transparently share the racial makeup of full-time staff, vendors, contract employees, and ownership of the brands they stock reveals a disappointing disconnect between the company values conveyed through marketing messaging, or the talk, with hiring and procurement practices, the walk. To spell this out once again, those of us working in weed are earning a living selling a product that Black people are 4 times more likely to be arrested for possessing to this day. Black people claim less than 5% majority ownership in the U.S. cannabis industry. Where is the upside in legal weed for Black people? How to Do the Pot social justice episode first aired 6 months ago as part of the podcast's inaugural season. It is also the episode that gives voice to the consequences of this blatant, continued hypocrisy when it comes to weed's profit and punishment. Now hear from 2 of the episode's featured guests, Raven Duckett, an entrepreneur and California's first social equity license holder.
You have stories of people being like, well, my brother was thrown in jail because he had an ounce on him, so I'll never touch that cannabis plant in my whole entire life. It's like the worst thing you could do. Kind of like feelings, which is like, that's a real emotion and that's a real experience that you had, but it doesn't have anything to do with weed, and it has a lot to do with the system that we live in and the things we're set up. But it's like people associate a lot of that, a lot of all the like fears and trauma of like the whole war on drugs is directly associated with weed.
Liz Mora, a Los Angeles-based cannabis equity holder who, as a young mother, was separated from her children while in prison for a cannabis conviction.
Over a year in federal custody, 2 years probation, but I losing my kids, having to be away from them for so long. When my daughter was 7 months, Esteban was 9 years old. It was pretty hard.
Raven, Lee, and Liz are real women who share real stories everyone buying legal weed really needs to hear. Why? Their words will echo every time you consider the brands you buy and the people into whom you're investing your dollars. We talk about the importance of voting with your dollars, and if not in weed, then what are we doing here? I, April Pride, alongside the podcast co-creator, Ellen Scanlon, know what we're doing here, which is best articulated in an article that I found and that you can find links to in the show notes on our website. And I'm quoting here, "White women have a responsibility to be conscious and intentional in using their power and influence to remove barriers and clear the path for all women," end quote. As white women, Ellen and I advocate for better financial and health outcomes for all women, thanks to cannabis. This is what we're passionate about, our talk. Number 1, we believe the cannabis plant engenders connection and collaboration. The foundational blueprint of our industry should reflect similar values and community. Number 2, we want women working in cannabis to attain great personal wealth. The cannabis industry offers women of every color an opportunity to create generational wealth, to begin addressing the gender and racial wealth gap in our country. In order for this to happen, much greater investment in non-white, non-male cannabis founders is needed from angels to VCs. Number 3, we want women making decisions about women's cannabis needs. As we've seen in healthcare, without women in decision-making roles, our priorities aren't considered. Cannabis is now a wellness product strongly marketed to women, yet this influential consumer segment is underrepresented in the boardroom, the C-suite, and other pivotal roles throughout the supply chain. This is what the High Guide, parent company to How to Do the Pot, has done, what we are doing, and what we will continue to do. This is our walk. Number 1, since inception, our primarily outsourced marketing and production teams have been 82% women, 33% non-white, with 13% Black people and 13% LGBTQ+. Going forward, our hires will continue to reflect that of the U.S. population, at least 50% women, 40% non-white, and with 15% of those being Black people and 5% LGBTQ+. Number 2, our social justice episode only includes in-kind sponsorship. We don't accept money from advertisers, and instead we feature a cannabis brand founded by a Black woman. Number 3, personally, I'm invested in 3 cannabis startups, 2 of which have Black women as founders, including Frig, getfrig.com, founded by Kimberly Dillon, as well as Community Gardens, founded by Raven Duckett, who we heard from earlier, as well as Demetrius Robinson and Malachi White. Ellen, my business partner, facilitated a 6-figure investment for Community Gardens. The third company I invested in is Barbary, co-founded by Meryl Montgomery and Valerie Sarkota. Meryl is a woman of color, Valerie's a white woman, and these are the first angel investments I've ever made, and I did so very conscientiously. Please, again, listen to our social justice episode because it offers exactly what you should know about why the particulars of the brands you choose to support in cannabis actually matter. And for today's high five, how to spend your money with intention. Number 1, across the U.S., women make 85% of all consumer purchasing decisions. 76 million women live in states with some form of legal cannabis. Adult use in 11 states and D.C., and medical use is legal in 33 states. Choosing who you buy weed from with intention will have a big impact. Number 2, Cannaclusive has created a searchable list of brands so you can research and support the businesses that reflect the diversity of the U.S. population. Again, those numbers are 50% women, 40% people of color, including 15% Black people. Number 3, consumers will have to lead the way because investors are not. In 2019, only 2.8% of venture capital money went to women-founded businesses, and Black women founders received less than 0.2% of venture funding. Number 4, in cannabis investing, the trends are not good. From 2013 to 2020, investors poured in $14.3 billion into cannabis companies, but only $443 million went to women-founded companies. That's less than 0.003%. Even finding investment data on companies founded by Black women is a challenge, so let's assume that the numbers are very, very small. Number 5, how can we combat the stark racial inequities in the cannabis industry? We believe in economic empowerment. Supernova, an organization formed in 2015, says it best: utilize the diverse talents of women of color to become self-sufficient shareholders in the evolving cannabis economy. Vote with your dollars. Links to the organizations I mentioned are in the show notes, and you can find out more at dothepot.com. In every newsletter, we offer 3 cannabis strains we think you'll like. This week, we hope you enjoy these summertime strains. Number 1, Pink Lemonade. Takes the edge off, gives you a hazy, focused mind, ideal for repetitive tasks, and it reduces stress by warming your body. Granddaddy Purple. Relaxed body, dreamy mind. Best if you can settle into a couch, if you know what I mean. And less is most definitely more. Lemon Daddy. Super Lemon Haze meets Granddaddy Perp. It's a great daytime strain. Keeps you relaxed, yet focused. If you want to go deeper into strains, stay tuned. We have an exciting new series dropping soon. The newsletter also always includes 3 podcasts that Ellen and I love and want to share with you. These podcast picks are thematic to the overall topic of the week's newsletter. The podcast I recommend that you dig into is 1619, which is the audio form of a New York Times Magazine piece, and it went live in audio in September of 2019. It's produced, again, by the New York Times, and it's hosted by Nicole Hannah-Jones. It's a chronological narrative that is exhaustive in its cause and effect investigation of slavery in America. Ellen likes Call Your Girlfriend's episode, Media Reckoning. It reviews the conflict between outward-facing messaging, ads, content, solidarity statements, and internal office behavior. Our third podcast pick will always be a podcast episode that speaks to how to do the pot. And we recommend that you listen to The New Yorker, Politics, and More, hosted by Jelani Cobb, and the episode on communities of color fighting for a stake in the legal cannabis market.